Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, Reza Aslan's lies about Islamic female genital mutilation. Viewer discretion is advised. Reza Aslan, a scholar of religions, a professor at the University of California, Riverside, recently made the claim on CNN that female genital mutilation is not an Islamic problem. To discuss this issue with us this evening, we've invited Dr. Mark Christian, the president and executive director of the Global Faith Institute. He is the son and nephew of high-ranking leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in his home country of Egypt. A former Islamic imam who converted from Islam to Christianity, he dedicated his life and work to the proposition that the first victims of Islam are the Muslims themselves. Dr. Christian, what an honor and privilege it is to have you on the Glazov Gang.
Thank you very much for having me, and the honor is mine. I'd be honored to be on your show.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. Now look, to say that female genital mutilation is not a problem in Muslim-majority states, which Reza Aslan said on CNN, this is a horrendous lie, and you're an expert on this issue for various reasons, and let's get into this. But first, introduce yourself to our viewers. You were a doctor in Egypt who actually worked with the victims of FGM. So we have somebody here with us this evening that knows what they're talking about and has experienced many things to do with this violent crime against women. Go ahead, Dr. Christian. Tell us your background.
I grew up in Cairo, Egypt, and I lived most of my life over there. I graduated from medical school in Cairo University, and I worked as a physician, as an OBGYN in different hospitals in different regions around Cairo and other places as well. And during my practice, I also did some time into the military as a physician in the high-ranking military hospital, the El Mahdi Hospital, for quite some time, right before I moved to the United States in 2005.
Dr. Christian, tell us a bit about how you worked with these poor girls that were victimized by this vicious crime. Share with us just, some of their experiences, why they came to you.
So, Jamie, there is different kinds of female circumcision, and Egypt is very well known for the number of female circumcision, and I would refer to the female genital mutilation as female circumcision because this is what is called in Egypt and in the Muslim world and in Islam, and scholars of Islam call it as such. There's different kinds that people are doing these procedures. And all of those procedures are not medically prescribed whatsoever. There is no medical need of any of those procedures whatsoever other than religious and a society kind of obligation in families.
Doctor, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Dr. Christian, so let's move to that then. Reza Aslan says that this is not Islamic, that it's not a Muslim problem, that it's not a problem in Muslim countries. But yet, as we know, it's very widespread and practiced in Egypt. As we know, it's also in Iraq. And in many, we know that 40% of Kurdish women, for instance, have had this perpetrated against them. We know that many Muslims in Britain, for instance, this is a huge problem, that it's happening to Muslim girls in Britain. And a lot of them are not from Africa. And by the way, why I'm bringing that up is Reza Aslan on CNN said that, he was talking about Eritrea and Ethiopia, saying that this is a Central African problem. Number one, that's East Africa, so he's mistaken there. And secondly, he was saying that they were Christian nations. But the fact of the matter is that there's nothing in the Christian texts that inspire or sanction this crime, and that's why it's very easy for Christians to eradicate this practice in the cultures where they exist, because it's unchristian. But in terms of female genital mutilation in Islam, it is Islamic because it's based on Islamic theology. And that's why this is happening to 2 million girls a year. And in the overwhelming majority of cases, it's happening to Muslim girls perpetrated by Muslims. I'm sorry about my tirade, but that is the introduction here, Dr. Christian, for you to discuss the theological roots of this crime.
There is no any indication about female circumcision in any other theological scripture, either in Judaism or Christianity, except in Islam. There is 5 well-documented hadith, which is a saying of Muhammad that is very well documented, that has mentioned the female circumcision and why it is supposed to be done. There is nothing like this in Christianity or Judaism whatsoever. Reza Aslan was trying his best to prove the lie that Islam is practiced in different places depending on the country and the laws in those countries. And he brought up Turkey and Indonesia and Africa and so forth. And in reality, Islam does not even consider the borders of any importance in Islamic Sharia or Islamic doctrine. Muslims are Muslims anywhere, whether the United States, in Europe, in Africa, or in Asia. They only abide by the Sharia law because this is their religious obligation. And when I generalize this, I'm not really talking out of unexperienced. This is exactly how Muslims are practicing. I was an imam as well back in Egypt while I was a Muslim before leaving Islam and breaking the bondage from Islam and becoming a follower of Jesus Christ. Another important fact that we need to present, yes, he said one thing that might be has some ground of truth, that the female circumcision existed in the Arabian Peninsula and started in Egypt actually during the Pharaoh time, and this is way before Islam, and this is true and this is fact. But the only people that carried on with this kind of unhumane procedure for centuries afterward until today is only Islam, and this is only because Islamic teachings, according to Muhammad Hadith, the 5 well-documented Hadith, ask families and women and fathers to do this to their own girls. And the only group that is doing this till today are Muslims, whether they exist in Eastern Africa or Central Africa or anywhere in the world. It's only Muslims who are doing this. There is another 2 groups that are doing the female circumcision as well. Those are the Christians of Egypt, and they are referred to as the Coptics, and also the Jews of Ethiopia. None of those 2 groups are doing this because of any theological teachings in their own religion, only because of their neighborhood Muslims always criticize them and harass them because they are not doing such to their own girls. And under that kind of pressure and peer pressure and culture pressure, those Christians and Jews are doing it. And as soon as the Ethiopian Jews left Ethiopia, and right now they reside in Israel, they stopped practicing this on their own girls altogether.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. So you bring up some very important points there. I want to touch on 2 of them. One thing that always gets me is whenever we try to do something on behalf of the victims of totalitarianism, there's always this equivocation from the leftist apologists in the West and the minions of the Muslim Brotherhood. For instance, we'll bring up female genital mutilation in Egypt and what's happening to the poor Muslim girls in Egypt. And somebody like Reza Aslan right away says, oh, well, wait a minute, it's happening over here as well, and these people are doing it too. First of all, who cares? In the sense that I'm not saying who cares about those victims too. What I mean is, why does this take away from something that we need to be doing for Muslim girls? And then it is done by other groups. We can also get to the other groups as well, and we can wipe this out everywhere. But they all the time argue that if a sin somehow exists somewhere else, that we should not try to do something about the barbarity that's being done, for instance, under communist regimes or under Islamic gender apartheid, etc. And so what do you think of that double standard, and what do you think of how they're always equivocating and obfuscating? Why is Reza Aslan trying to abandon Muslim girls who are being victimized in this way?
I think it's for very selfish reasons, and mainly, I lived with and I get close to many cultural Muslims who does not even understand what Islam teaches. They don't practice Islam, or they don't even go to the mosque, or they don't know where the mosque is in their neighborhood, whether they are in the Middle East or in the United States or other places. And I'm in constant contact with those Muslims. And the biggest problem is, when these Muslims hear about the atrocities of Islam, they feel ashamed and they feel, so much threatened in their background and so forth. And this is why they need to shut down people like you and me, and also shut down everybody who speaks, even if it's one from their own. Like Bill Maher, for example, he is a very liberal man. He does not believe in any religion. But when he starts speaking about the truth about Islam, everybody wants to shut him down and does not let him speak in any place. And Rolla Jibril, the Palestinian lady that was on his show the other day is a proof of that. That she, as much as she's an activist and as she says that she's a very liberal Muslim, and I believe her. She married a non-Muslim guy and she's carrying a very liberal life. But at the same time, she has her views against Israel and she has her views against anybody who speaks against Islam, and always using some terminology that she knows very well that is a bunch of lies. When she asked Bill Maher on his show, you are not aware of different sects of Islam, like what are the Sufis and what are the Sunni and what are the jihadists. And she knows very well. Her dad was an imam in Jerusalem for multiple years, and she grew up in running around and playing around the mosque. She knows very well that what she accused Bill Maher with is a bunch of lies, because there is no such a thing as Sufi and Sunni and jihadist and other sects of Islam. There is only one Islam, and there is no difference in theology between the Sufi and the jihadi and the Sunni. All of them believe in the same thing. They believe the same Quran, they believe the same hadith of Muhammad. And anybody who rejects one word of Muhammad is considered an apostate of Islam and supposed to be killed and supposed to be called for his death, the same way that happens with me when I left Islam.
And you are a brave and courageous man indeed, Dr. Christian. And when you talk about this willful blindness that these individuals engage in and try to impose on us, let's zero in with the time we have left here a bit more on the theology, because this is crucial here. So for instance, somebody like Reza Aslan that will turn away from the barbarity being perpetrated against Muslim girls, whereas it's people like me and you, we're accused of being Islamophobic, but we actually care about those Muslim girls. And I would say that people like Reza Aslan, those are the people that can't stand Muslim people and are prejudiced against Muslim people, because they won't come to their defense.
Those are not only girls, Jamie. They do this to girls, but this is a kind of the same line of prosecuting of women and denying their rights in the Muslim faith altogether. Muslim women has no rights whatsoever, even though they push the lie that Islam liberated women and give her rights that never existed before, which is all bunch of lies, because the Bible and Jesus was in existence before Islam even was in existence by 572 years. So I have no idea how they say that. Those a bunch of lies. Because if you want to know about equality and rights for women, read the Bible and you understand how Jesus talked about women and how it's supposed to be respected and treated.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. So look, this crime is being perpetrated against Muslim girls, and we want to come to their defense. We want to give respect to the victims, and we want to try to help them in every way, and we also want to protect future potential victims. And the way we do this is going to the texts and unveiling and exposing what's at the root of this, because then something can be done about it. So for instance, in Egypt, there were many attempts to stop FGM, but the clerics and the imams and the muftis, they came forward and they pointed, for instance, at Umdad al-Salik, the Reliance of the Traveler. This is the authoritative summation and a manual of the Shafi'i school of Islamic jurisprudence. It sanctions female genital mutilation. In the Hadith, as you have referred to, we know in the case of Aisha, that she had this perpetrated against her. And Muhammad is quoted in the Hadith as saying, cut but not too deeply. Tell us about this theological foundation and how people like Reza Aslan, if he has any integrity and honor, should confront those texts and repudiate them.
They are pushing again, a whole bunch of lies from very selfish reasons. They want to defend themselves, that they don't care about women and girls in Islam and how they have been treated for centuries and still treated that way. There is 5 very well documented hadith that talks about female circumcision in Islam. When he says that Islam is not pushing for this, as a matter of fact, if he asks about hijab is not even mentioned in the Quran or hadith whatsoever. Can we have a debate about is hijab an Islamic thing or not? We can't, because it's a very well-known fact. Also, male circumcision, never mentioned in the Quran, never mentioned in hadith. Yet Muslims know very well that male circumcision is a must. So some of the things that Reza Aslan is using is a whole bunch of lies and built on deception. As a matter of fact, hijab is not mentioned in the Quran or Hadith. Male circumcision is not mentioned in Quran or Hadith. Yet female circumcision is mentioned in Hadith. It is not mentioned in the Quran. This is true. It existed before Islam. It is true. But Muhammad, in 5 well-documented Hadith, pushed for the narrative that female circumcision is supposed to be done, and how it's supposed to be done, and why it is supposed to be done in those Hadith. And all of those pointing to one thing: woman has no right even to enjoy her marriage and enjoy her relationship with the man. And that goes with the same line of the Quran when it says that your women are your own soil. You go to your soil whenever you want to. It is the man's right to his woman to do whatever he wants to do with her, also to get the pleasure he needs from her, and she has no right in Islam to enjoy that whatsoever. And this is why the Hadith says cut short and not cut so much, so she continue having, pleasure her husband, but she does not get the pleasure herself.
Dr. Christian, you are a doctor. You're also a former Muslim imam. Am I correct?
That's true.
Right, and I think you know a little bit more about these things, therefore, than Reza Aslan, which is a given. But perhaps he does, as we know. We know he knows
all of that things. I believe Reza Aslan,
Yeah.
he knows all of those things.
Yeah.
But he deliberately lying about it to prove himself right and to prove himself good, and not caring about all those girls and those women are suffering under the knife of Islam.
No, absolutely. It was an expression that I used. What I meant was we're talking to a real authority here today, and I agree. Reza Aslan, I'm sure, knows the truth, but he's engaged in deception to the Western audience, etc. Let's finish with this, Dr. Christian. While you were a Muslim, I think that all these things that we're discussing, I think that this played on your conscience. And tell us a bit about how you witnessed this barbarity against women as an imam and doctor, and how it influenced your way out of Islam.
Let me tell you this. I have seen firsthand, and I try to fix as much as I can as an OBGYN, the suffering of those girls and women from the atrocity of the female circumcision. The side effects of this surgery starts from death, because many of them die from infection and from bleeding, because it is not done by medical professionals, especially in the rural areas and in the countryside in Egypt and in Africa and in Sudan and other places across the Muslim world. The other thing is, as they grow up, they suffer from multiple things, including prolapse, where they have, really very bad female situation. Infertility is the major cause that they come to doctors, suffering from infertility, and also severe pain during sexual intercourse after marriage, and urinary tract infection and many things. And I was on a regular basis performing surgery to fix as much as I can, and some of those situations never been fixed, and no way can fix them because of the way it has been done and how barbaric it was done.
Dr. Christian, thank you so much for being such a noble knight and such a brave truth teller, and focusing light on this darkness, which is really what needs to be done to come to the defense of all suffering people, and including the people, and especially the girls that suffer so much under Islamic gender apartheid. Dr. Christian, thank you for joining the Glazov Gang.
Thank you very much for having me, and let's keep fighting for the right of those oppressed, especially the Muslims, who are the first victims of Islam.
Thank you, Dr. Christian. It was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show, and we'll see you next week on the Glazov Gang.